Okay, we heard that. The last town board meeting, we did this, it said that,
But it didn't do it,
it's nowhere to be found.
not in the cloud somewhere.
On the cloud somewhere.
Hmm.
I'm gonna go get a copy of the, well, you've got the here.
Yes, no,
Right.
you need it more than I do.
Mm.
Got the email I forwarded,
Which one? Yes,
the bill one,
Yes.
yeah,
I did.
good. Good thing, right?
With the, oh yeah,
Hey, Ralph. Hello.
Hi, Ralph. I'm Tilly in disguise.
Meg,
Oh, almost got blown away.
Pretty bad.
tired now. Lastly, we need is people calling. Well,
Hi,
Meg,
I'm Meg
yeah,
Wheeler.
I'm just gonna introduce you. This is Will Agresta,
Finally in person.
Meg Winfield. And Ralph Fidelli.
Can I get you some water?
I'm fine.
You sure?
Hi, Edie.
Hi, hi.
So we're just waiting for it.
One.
We're just gonna wait a second for Will, please. I mean, excuse me, for Warren. Will, how far did you come from? Where did you come from?
I'm living in Sandy Hook, Connecticut.
Okay, so you came across Connecticut. Mhm.
Not too bad.
Yeah, it's all sort of back.
Yeah. We don't have the GPS thing anymore. I don't know how we got anywhere before.
I don't know how we got it.
We used maps.
We.
I bought one because I love them so much when you're stuck in traffic.
Mhm.
It's like, just get me on the side road.
But it was- I don't know whether, was it Warren who called or Barbara? Barbara called.
Sure, it's Barbara.
Mhm. Didn't say that Warren did that.
Awful windy out there.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm surprised we haven't lost power.
Mhm.
We had a glitch the other day, but yeah, you know, but this.
Yes, I know how to keep everything
Yeah.
charged.
Yeah.
the other day, I watched it like 3 times throughout the day,
Mhm.
but only for like 15, 20 minutes each time.
Hmm. Luckily it came back on. I was away, but I lost it, I couldn't
But there's there was a small tree down on, County Road 5 when I came down the hill.
You'll have to come through Chicago because Tom is putting in his driveway.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so he had to do that because they couldn't share it anymore?
Well, we chose not to, I guess.
Well, that's good.
Is that Tom Bond?
Yeah,
He's putting in a driveway?
yeah. Took down a lot of trees and they had the excavating equipment there this morning when I left.
I was wondering whether everybody's seen the trees that have been cut down on North
Yes.
Maple.
What's?
That's the county, because they're gonna they're gonna redo the sidewalks all the way up to Highland on North Maple.
Oh,
And
great.
so they've been cutting the trees down because the roots or, something, so
Oh,
anyway, they were out here yesterday. I don't think they're gonna do anything else for a long time, but they
oh,
were
really? No, I was.
They took
at
their
the-
corner tree down, right, yesterday.
on the far corner.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what that was all about.
Warren's here, I just saw him.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's sort of sad when you see the trees cut down like that. It's
Yeah,
almost
no,
like
we
you
had
wish,
people calling to
cut 'em
say, can't we
dig them off.
block this? And
Yeah, or what it costs to buy a new tree, like a small tree these days.
well, I think when you put the sidewalks in, if they're trying to deal with the roots before the
That's a good point.
root problem.
Well, that's positive about the sidewalk.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hey, Warren.
Ask you, how are the roads? Windy.
Huh, that's fine. It's a little windy.
Mhm. Okay. All right, we waited for you because I wanted you just to be able to remind us of the email that you sent me, which to the extent that the town board is permitted to ask somebody to take, in the absence of the clerk, to take minutes. But I'd like to start by calling this special meeting of the town board of the town of Northeast to order. It is 4 o'clock on Friday, March 21, 2025. And I'd like to ask you to join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Warren, could you just, in 2 sentences, just remind me, the board of what you've sent to me, which is that the board is permitted under state law to ask somebody else to take minutes.
Yes, we are permitted to, there was an old opinion that the town clerk had to come to all town board meetings and take minutes, but that's been superseded by more recent opinions of I believe the controller, state controller, and the court decision, so you're not bound if you don't have a clerk or a deputy clerk to not have the meeting. You can appoint somebody to take the minute.
And with that, I would like to ask them for a motion to appoint Edie Greenwood to take minutes of today's meeting of the town board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now, with that, Edie, could you take a quick roll call of the board
Yes. Chris Kennan, supervisor,
here?
Lana Morrison, a deputy supervisor.
Here.
Chris Mayville, councilman,
Here.
Meg Winkler, councilwoman.
Here.
Ralph Fidelli, councilman.
Here.
Okay, thank you. You have a copy of the agenda. It's pretty simple. but I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have the purpose of today's meeting is for the board to review the zoning amendments, which were prepared over the last 3.5 years by the zoning review committee. And this is I think, third in a series of meetings that the town board will have had to do this. But before we get going, we have one item of business left over from our last board meeting, which is consideration of an MOU, memorandum of understanding for the use of the town of Northeast Old Highway Garage during a period of emergency. This was discussed at our meeting at our last
Thursday.
at our last board meeting. And it was agreed that it needed refinement and revision, which has been done. I have sent copies of the MOU with refinements and revisions to all of the board. This is a memorandum of understanding which provides that the town is able to provide the use of our old highway garage on South Center Street to the village of Millerton. As I've said in emails, I think that this is a building which is not being used at the moment. The village has a very clear need, which the mayor spoke to before, of space for their equipment and vehicles. And I am very eager to see us be able to help the village in this respect. So this MOU has been worked on, and I will be happy to take any questions or any comments. But otherwise, I will like to make a motion. Warren, you have I think a resolution. You talked about a resolution.
Did Barbara send it on? I did prepare it.
Who would she have sent it to?
I don't know. Let me see if she included it in what I have. Tell you what,
Okay,
why don't we just call her and then she'll email it over
Well,
and we can pass it.
it may be,
Or,
it may have come into my computer or to the clerk's.
you know,
Anyway,
Is that what Lorna was going to do?
it's exactly like the last resolution, except that we just changed the date.
okay,
So you have the old resolution.
yes,
But about the date, we can utilize
Right.
that.
all right, well. Why don't we just hold on this for a second while we find the resolution, because I think it's important that we have the resolution. And that the resolution precedes the MOU. Because actually, that is the key document, is the resolution which authorizes the town supervisor to sign the memorandum.
Mhm.
It's pretty specific though
Memorandum.
to use it.
Key document, but that's
Right.
what you need to pass.
While we're waiting for that. Just by way of introduction
Yeah,
That's the old one.
of our topic for our zoning amendments. I just want to express, first of all, my appreciation to Will for being here. And while we're at it, for the last 3+ years that you have spent working with the ZRC at a distance. And it's really nice it's great to meet you in person and to appreciate your being able to join with us. This, our board is eager to get through what the ZRC has done. and to understand as much as we can. We're not gonna spend 3.5 years on this. And we have lots of other, things that we're trying to get done at the same time. But we are aware of the importance of rezoning the commercial districts, in particular in the boulevard, for the growth of this town and for what has become a sort of a blighted entrance to the town. And I think that redoing the zoning, revising the zoning there is going to make a difference both for the potential commercial use, also for housing in that area. We know, the board knows that, down the road lies the remainder of the zoning of the town. I think that when I first became supervisor, my thought was, well, redoing the zoning for the whole town, that should just take us, we should be able to do that in 1 year. I've learned. Anyway, that will come later, but I think it is helpful that we've started with the commercial districts of the town. And we have started to, as I mentioned before, we've spent two sessions going through the zoning. So much of what the ZRC did, I think, looks great from my perspective. There are some things where we probably, will want to take a different path. But overall, it really brings the zoning of that area into a more modern time. And that is great. Edie, when we dive into this today, do you have a suggestion as to how we can move through that? We've talked about several different things for our conversation today. And maybe we could start with sidewalks, but we could start, unless you have.
Well, I think the place to start is with the responses that we received from Will from the last time. Just if there are any questions that you had with his responses.
Excuse me, do you want, so we
So
can,
I downloaded the last one.
we have the resolution, so we can just.
Oh,
Okay, Lauren's going up to print it out,
Yeah.
but we have it.
It's on my desktop. I downloaded the March 13th one that was
Okay.
presented to us. So do you want to look? Do you want to read it, or do you want to read it into the minutes, or?
I'm happy to read it in the minutes or
Warren just said that we
just
need,
changing the date.
It's only the only change.
here's my mouse too, if you want it. Okay,
Okay. I will.
it is a PC,
I
so
will need it because I can't get to the bottom of that. Resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute a memorandum of understanding for the use of the town of Northeast Old Highway Garage during the period of emergency of the village of Millerton. Whereas the village of Millerton's highway garage was recently destroyed by fire, and the village has requested that during its period of emergency, the town will allow the village to use its old highway garage pursuant to a memorandum of understanding. And whereas the attorney to the town has prepared a memorandum of understanding for the use of the old highway garage by the village, which has been reviewed by the town board and found to be acceptable in terms of form and content. And whereas the town board determines that the memorandum of understanding and use of the town's old highway garage pursuant to this municipal cooperation agreement is in the best interest of the citizens of the town and the village. And whereas the town board has determined that this is a type 2 action under SECRA, now therefore be it resolved that the town board. Let's see whether we can scroll down here.
is it working for you?
Okay, that should do it. Thank you. Whereas the town board has determined that this is type 2 action under secret, now therefore be it resolved, the town board hereby authorizes the supervisor of the town to execute a memorandum of understanding for the use of the town's old highway garage by the village during its period of emergency in the form or substantially the form annexed here to. This motion was offered by town board member Chris Cannon, and seconded by town board member.
Second. So do we keep record of that?
Yes, if you could,
I mean, I can
Hold.
type it into,
so we have a motion and a second. So Edie, if you would be kind enough to
second.
hold the board.
Can I have my mouse for a second,
Oh,
please?
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes, Supervisor Kennan,
Aye.
Yeah.
Councilman Ralph Fidelli,
Aye.
Councilwoman Meg Winkler,
Aye.
Councilman Chris Mayville,
Aye.
Deputy Supervisor Lana Morrison.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all.
So,
She'll do it?
With that,
follow, Senator.
Okay.
with that. Mayor, since you are here, and since the board has passed this resolution, I now can sign this, and I'm just gonna give it to you. Okay,
You'll have insurance Monday morning.
all right. Well, in fact, if you,
We can pass it.
let me sign that one, leave that one with us, and I'll give you another one.
So that's-
There, too.
Memorandum, isn't it? That's not.
That's the
res-
memorandum. That's,
Did we vote on?
It
We
was
voted-
Oh, that's
attached.
part of to the resolution?
Yes,
yeah,
it stated it was attached.
Oh, okay.
You want to fill in the date of the 21st?
Yeah.
You want to put the date as the 21st?
Yeah.
Okay.
and then you can. You can take that one. All right, fine. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you all very much.
Okay,
I guess it's
Back
just
to
not
zoning.
complete,
back to zoning.
but it's not really complete until they pass their resolution.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, back to zoning.
Okay,
I suggest we start with Will's responses to the email I had sent with the questions.
I have, yeah.
I think it's dated February 22nd, and it's really a question of, did you have any questions with his responses?
Mhm.
Type statements, not necessarily questions, but
Give me a copy of that.
is the office open?
Here. I just make sure.
You have a level to yourself?
No, it's fine.
You want to share?
Yeah, we'll share it. We'll share it.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
so.
You need it?
I mean, we touched on daycare, adult care, that's the first point, and senior housing. I'm thinking the daycare and adult care, for me personally, I like to default to Chris Mayville, because he's an expert in these kind of things along, well, at least you know a lot. And senior housing, maybe default to Nan and Chris Mayville at its appropriate time.
Yeah, I
Because
wanted to get into sidewalks if you
Yeah.
could.
I know, but
No, I'm just
He said
asking if
in
you had any
response to
questions.
this.
Mhm.
Edie said in response to this. So if you don't want to do that, I won't say anything, but the point is, she said that, so.
Well, I was looking for overarching questions. but-
Well, my biggest
Without Will
takeaway,
here.
my biggest takeaway is for Echo, we came to this conclusion because our town doesn't have any mechanisms for, we don't have removable housing, we don't have a mechanism for permitting, we don't have a mechanism for, we don't, zoning.
We do have a
Yearly,
mechanism.
our zoning says it's yearly a permit, okay? a yearly permit to operate an Echo
Oh,
unit.
okay.
So we didn't find with the changes to accessory dwelling units being modern to contemporary times, we didn't find a need for the word Echo, and that's the reasoning why we were taking it out. That was,
And Will's response was, there's no problem leaving it in, just in case.
I know, but I think it's useless at this point. But anyway, we can round back to it with Nan too. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, aren't the echoes the ones that can come and go?
Yeah,
We don't have that. Yeah, I mean, they
Well,
don't.
you don't, no one even used it, but
Oh, yeah, we had an application, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago.
I don't think it's still
It's not
in
really very,
existence.
it's not
Are
very.
they still doing that?
We had an application to the zoning board. And it was totally appropriate. It was a disabled
Yeah.
family member.
But was it ever removed?
No, they put it up.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just, we can round back to it. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's just another more flexible way for a certain population to provide that type of housing. That's all it does. It has a terrible name, Granny Pines.
Mhm. Mhm.
How is that
Well, we are-
the ADU?
ADU is a broad use of an accessory apartment or dwelling. It could be used for any purpose. It's usually a garage, a basement, part of your house, or a separate unit. But it's not defined as an Echo as being a temporary, has to be permitted every year, and it could be removed by the town.
And
If
it
you
needs to
don't
be a
say.
relative.
It's
Yes,
because it has more flexibility into what it's constructed of, where it's placed and how, and where it sits. It's not meant to be permanent, it's meant to serve a need for a situation with a person. And it gives flexibility that the ADU standards would not provide.
I think I mentioned at the last meeting that one thing I saw lacking in our current version of the code is that we seem to allow only accessory apartments,
And that's in
but
the,
not accessory dwelling units.
no, we don't have accessory dwelling
You
unit.
know,
I don't know what the
Language.
difference is.
well, then I
yeah,
think.
accessory apartment would be within the main house.
No, we've granted them at the ZBA in Barnes, but we've never granted a permit to build an accessory.
And folks are doing that already in our town.
Yeah, most of the towns I represent, we have
What,
separate provision for standalone accessory dwelling.
having that it happens in the residential district, we have not addressed that part of
Right,
the
we
code.
Oh, you're only.
Yeah,
so
we've
you're
only focused
And
on,
my comment to you back on the accessory dwellings is that could be amended to be less restrictive.
yes, it easily could be.
And New York State has just passed a law which
Yeah.
provides an assessment benefit for people who are creating accessory dwelling units. So it's good to have in our law as many options for accessory dwelling as possible so that they would qualify for these.
So.
So we're gonna come back to that.
Yeah.
And I think that, those comments are well taken, and, an expansion of that will be something that we'll want to pursue.
I guess the only other thing was read through Will's comments about music or entertainment, on his point, about that. Restaurants and brew pubs already, has an accessory component, and that could be given, put it modified in the definition to allow internal music. If needed, so whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how we want to deal with that. We don't have. In the commercial district, we don't have, I mean, we do have some food places that serve food. I don't know whether in this, we want to get into the regulations of how, how loud, what direction music could be, or whether there could be music for outdoor seating. This obviously doesn't speak to indoors. This is all about,
He said we could say for indoors, it's okay, without even bringing up outdoor, just,
Mhm.
I mean, they're hoping to put a restaurant in there too, so.
Yeah. I mean, I would want to make sure that the zoning that we have gives the flexibility to bring a restaurant to the boulevard. There's already at least one that is going through the process. And there will be more.
So now it is an
Mhm.
allowed use.
Yeah, and
Totally.
whether it is helpful at this point to stipulate that music is part of that and can be part of that. You know, if it's helpful and makes that more clear, you know, I don't have a problem with this. There are other regulations that, you know, that could be in place in terms of noise. Yeah, but that would get into a pretty deep territory, you know, in that area. The town has tried to have a noise ordinance and that did not succeed.
Not so well.
Yeah.
That was before, I think most of us were on the board. Like Ralph, it might have been when you were on the board, and the noise thing came up.
I was there with the grass problem.
Okay, that's a different problem. Anyway, is there anything that we can do right now relative to noise and music for restaurants that is,
Are they gonna require a special use permit and site plan?
Yeah.
So depending on what they're doing, the planning board would have jurisdiction to possibly regulate that as a condition of the approval.
yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
recall exactly, but most uses are going to site plan only, so if it's not.
The site plan.
If it's not in the code, it's
You know,
how much you can do.
you know,
That doesn't mean we can't require special permits. I mean, this is just a draft.
No, I get that, I'm just saying, if you leave it the way it is, where most uses are site plan, if it isn't in the code, you don't have as much discretion as you would with special permit, where you can have other general standards that you have to meet, which.
But for restaurants, we would make it a special permit.
So I get the part about making it, more emphatic about it being indoors, is there something we wanna do about the outdoors? You wanna talk about that?
I don't know how,
I think at this point, right?
you know, I think we want to. We want to make sure that nobody would ever, would be prevented from having music outdoors, if there's outdoor seating and they had a speaker that was playing music. You know.
But that would require a change, cause I think the current one kind of eliminates the loudspeaker.
Right. Well, we need to look at it because, I don't think we're probably gonna be able to figure it out right here. But, that gets into how loud and, to what extent this is disturbing other properties. I certainly, speaking for myself, don't have a problem with a restaurant being able to play, have music outside. It could be just background music, the way a lot of places would have.
yeah.
I think there's a
You want
difference
to
between
control
that and,
the district at this point where. The volume of music, unless it's a large brand, is not gonna make much of an impact
Yeah.
as it would in the village.
It's, I'm not sure we're gonna be able to come up with a perfect solution that addresses this in a way that gives clarity and definition to it. I would rather, if somebody has a specific suggestion for this, now or in the future, we can come back to it. But I think this is relative to what we're trying to get done. This is a pretty small piece, and I want to make sure that we take, maximum advantage of Will being here to talk about some of the larger issues that we have. What I'd like to come back to is the question of sidewalks and installing sidewalks in town. This piece was,
It was developed by Will.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
yeah, this was a piece called Methods of Installing Sidewalks in Towns,
Yes.
and it was some time ago. And it talks about 3 different ways of getting sidewalks built. One is via state and or municipal capital improvement. One is via zoning pursuant to abutting private land use development. And the third is via establishment of an improvement district. At the moment, the sidewalks that we have, and I went out and drove them this morning, I just drove this morning on the boulevard to see where they are, and they are, you know, they're piecemeal, and they're even piecemeal in front of the food market, the proposed supermarket, which has a portion of the sidewalk. And my understanding, if I'm correct, is that what we have at the moment is the second of those, which is the opportunity for sidewalks zoning pursuant to abutting private use development, in which when there's a change in ownership of a parcel or a capital improvement in excess of $250,000, that owner would be required to construct a sidewalk. What has seemed to me is that leaves the possibility that we have, and I'm really talking about the south side of the boulevard out to Kelsey Brook, without a way of pedestrians crossing Kelsey Brook except by walking in a state highway. I don't think it makes any sense for us to be trying to provide for sidewalks on the other side with no way to get to them. But in looking at the south side of Route 44 to Kelsey Brook, what concerns me about this way of proceeding is that without somebody spending $250,000 or a property changing hands, it could stay that way for decades. So partially built, partially not built. And of course, with it being partially not built, I think it is harder to enforce the obligation of property owners to maintain the bits of sidewalk that they do. Obviously, they are required to do that, but they languish. Will, could you just maybe just talk to us a little bit about the alternatives of constructing sidewalks by municipal capital improvement or by an improvement district?
Well, capital improvement, like anything else, you budget for it. And you go build it.
Yeah, but you would basically you would have to define what it was that you were planning to build, which is you were planning to build a sidewalk from X to Y.
Just like your highway garage.
Right.
Same thing, you know, you found a lot. You've got plans for what you needed, driveway, the parking lot, the building, the utilities that go into it. Yeah, you have to have a plan for the sidewalk and
Right.
then.
Then you have to go find the money for it.
Capital money or grants or a combination thereof, yeah, you go and.
It has the advantage of when you succeed in doing that, you are able then to build a sidewalk for the entire stretch that you are trying to build the sidewalk for.
Potentially. If you
Potentially.
could find enough money to do it all in one shot, I mean, it could be phased too.
Well, there is sidewalk in bits and pieces, as you know, it's.
Right, I meant to
Right.
get 100% coverage, you know, it would be, I mean, ideally you want it on both sides, ideally, but. You know, that may take more than one project to do that, based on availability of money. There is. Grant money for sidewalks,
There is
for
great.
new sidewalks is better than repair.
So, you know, I am interested in, you know, the possibility of seeing sidewalks get built, you know, in the reasonably foreseeable future as opposed to, you know, sort of going on without them. And the alternative is an improvement district, which essentially would require
Warren probably could
the,
explain that better than me, but it's sort of, you create this district and the district pays, you know, same thing as a sewer district.
right,
You pay into it and the improvements get bonded and.
would the property owners in the district have to agree to the district? They would.
Yeah, it'd be under Article 12 of the town law. But remember also, when you're building sidewalk on a state highway, you also have to get the approval of the state for your construction.
right.
I wonder how the other ones got built. Did they get
With
approval?
DOT,
DOT?
yeah, absolutely,
And they
because
allowed piecemeal development like that?
that was under when Dave Sherman was involved, but he certainly worked with the Department of
Did
Transportation.
the town do those cycles?
Yes. No, I don't know whether they did, no, I do not, I think the developer did, but the town worked with DOT to get the approvals.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding with DOT, for the most part, they're okay with it as long as they don't take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. We have actually had communication with DOT about the boulevard,
That's right.
their plans for the boulevard, as you know, are very, very old and very unspecific. It's not. Well, I'm not sure exactly how, if we were to try to have sidewalks built as a municipal capital improvement, how that relates to the ownership of the land. It's never been quite clear to me exactly where the parcels come out to the road, and I think that's been something that's been
Well,
discussed.
that would be either in the right of way, state right of way, which you would. The state would have to be part of it in a way. If you got grants, they'd probably be part of the grant, because there's probably state money that's coming out of, you're getting, which DOT would probably be administering. If it's off the right of way, you'd have to, and even,
From the property owner. Right,
you might even have to get easements for construction. I mean, the sidewalk might be completely in the right way, but you might have to have
right.
some temporary easement for construction.
Mhm.
When you pay for those or not, that's. How good you all are and how willing they are.
Right, well, and we have been relatively successful in getting a lot of grants for a lot of things in the last 5 years, but. That doesn't mean that will continue, and in the current funding environment, everything is up in the air. But I'm interested in getting thoughts from the board as to which way to proceed. We have one that has been suggested to us, which is, I don't want to call it the piecemeal approach, but it is the one which provides, as properties change hands or get improved significantly,
Yeah.
that the sidewalks get built.
And that doesn't mean if you keep that in the code, that that's the end all, you can still do a capital improvement.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the code.
Yeah,
Mhm,
I mean, you can have both.
mhm.
May I ask, so is the order we establish an improvement district first and then a sidewalk district, or do you just do
It
sidewalk?
would be,
district?
sidewalk district would be a type of district under Article 12. yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's separate sections for different types of districts.
Okay.
Hearing that there's nothing that prevents us, if we continue with the language for sidewalks that's in the plan that's been presented to us, from pursuing a capital improvement. Leads me to think that then is a reasonable way to proceed. But I certainly would like to have us have the option of, if we ever were aware of grants that were for sidewalks, and to permit, there's a lot of language about wanting to increase pedestrian usage and get people out of cars and so on. There are grants that have been very specifically targeted for that by the state. I certainly wouldn't want not to be able to pursue that, because we had language in our code.
Also, one of those grants, if you connect to the sidewalks, like the village, of course, to public facilities, those interconnections help boost your applications usually.
One of the challenges for this sidewalk is that it would certainly enable, pedestrian access to parcels that are on the boulevard. It wouldn't necessarily easily lend itself to bike paths going into Connecticut, for instance, because that's not a very comfortable road to bicycle on, with no shoulder and blind, all kinds of curves and so on.
Chris,
Yeah.
if we just said, like, took for granted that we can do a capital improvement, would we take out the part number 2 to say that it's required if you have a new development project of 250 or more, that they'd have to put the sidewalk in? Would we take that out?
No, I would think if that, if we had not been able to find funding to do the whole thing and somebody, and there was an event like that, a change of hands, I wouldn't want that obligation to disappear. Because as we all know, grant funding, you hear about it and then it's gone.
I have a question
Yeah.
about the grant funding. Now, if we did capital improvement, we could apply for grant funding. Now, if we did
47.
the, established a district, could they qualify and apply for grant funding as well? Can both types
I
apply
don't,
for
yeah,
grant funding?
I don't know whether
Okay.
if a district had been created. Because then it is the,
Still in this town.
it would be the district that would be wanting to be the grantee in a way. I don't know. Warren, do you have a?
Well, when you do, if you do a district. You're gonna have to. Everybody's gonna have to vote on it, and then you're gonna build the entire sidewalk, you're not gonna do it on piecemeal.
But then would all the participants there be the ones that had to pay for all of it
Right.
with no grant
Only the
money?
people within the district, you
Wow.
try to get grant money to supplement,
But you could get some grant money?
you're not gonna get the people in that boulevard to vote for a district.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But if you have it in the zoning and then you go and do a capital project and you need easements or other things, you're probably gonna get those a lot faster. Because
Yeah,
if you don't do the sidewalks in the capital plan. As they develop their properties, they're gonna pay for it, so.
yeah.
So my inclination then is to leave this language as is, as we have it. But for the board to be thinking as we go forward about establishing, looking for a capital project for this, because I've heard of, I don't think it's gonna happen overnight. It may take a while, but I do think that there are grant monies available for this type of project. And particularly in connection with, if and when a sewer wastewater district is constructed there, to have sidewalks as part of that, there is going to be, more development out there.
There is grant money. I just finished in the last year and a half, 2 separate sidewalk projects in one town, 2 different places and. Where we're talking about, aggregate $500,000 that we got in grant money.
Chris, I just heard from someone too, they were on a shared Zoom call with New Lebanon, which keeps coming up as a town. And they made a statement, they were getting sidewalks paid for by the DOT on the state, like 22 and those things. Paid full, and I Googled it, I couldn't find it today, but I did hear that, so maybe some more will come down the road to us. on
If
that.
DOT does improvement to the road, that's the time to hit them up and that's when they'll incorporate the sidewalk. And sometimes they have to incorporate down the road.
Yeah.
Like, we're not gonna build a roundabout here. When they build roundabouts, they build the sidewalks all around it and stuff,
Right,
and then they turn around and take care of it.
yeah, I don't think we have room for a roundabout.
Don't worry.
But I've seen a lot of they've been building roundabouts like crazy,
Yeah.
down in LaGrange and other places, there's lots of them.
And if you did sidewalk just on one side, cause I'm thinking money,
Mhm.
how hard is it to get approval to have crosswalks? It's real hard, right? Of course.
In my experience. I don't know.
To get over to the
Well, it needs to go
businesses on the other
somewhere.
side, what's that?
It needs to go somewhere.
No, like to go to the businesses on the other side,
Yeah.
Crosswalks in the DOT right away.
right?
I think it would be
It's gotta
hard
be at the
to,
intersection.
It is
hard to ask for a
difficult.
crosswalk without there being a sidewalk on the other side.
Yeah, you have to go somewhere, it has to land somewhere,
Yeah,
but it would be at an intersection, it's not gonna be. in the
Okay.
middle of-
Yeah, it's not right in the middle, but
Just,
yeah, no, I mean, there are crosswalks in the village, which are not at an intersection.
Yeah,
They're in the middle of a block and they've got flashing lights and they're striped and so on.
what is the speed limit in the village? Is it 15 and 20?
No, it's
30.
30, I believe. Yeah,
You can't
So-
go any faster than 15.
well, people do.
Oh, yeah.
narrow.
Anyway, any other thoughts about that? But I think if we. I'm comfortable leaving the language that's in the work that the ZRC has done on sidewalks. With the interest of the board in, pursuing this in other ways. I think that gives us flexibility to do something else. I do see it as a priority for the boulevard to have sidewalks.
May I ask a question? So as an example, since our grocery lot has been purchased, the plaza. So currently in front of the planning board was the plan to just fix up the parking lot and the main building, but they're hoping to do the rest of the plaza. If those things would then, if this is in place then, and then those projects are 250,000 or more, will that property owner then have to do sidewalks?
I believe,
Shall I answer?
Yeah.
I specifically asked at the planning board,
Uh-huh.
and the site plan that they're approving has sidewalks for the whole length.
Oh, really?
And there's, part is existing, but
Mhm.
it will continue all the way to the McDonald's
right, and the
At
McDonald's,
their expense.
at their expense.
right, the McDonald's does have a sidewalk in front of it. The Lotus, I think it's called the Lotus Building,
mhm.
that one does not.
No, it's on the other side
Mhm.
of the Kelsey.
That's good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's part of the
Okay.
site plan that hopefully will be approved at the next meeting.
So maybe with that, that gets us most of the way there.
It's just.
Is that only site plan approval that they required? For
That's probably a
the,
special permit, right?
just for the,
Bill, you're not gonna do
Planning
a
board.
special permit, are you?
No.
No,
no,
There-
just.
There's no special.
Yeah, but it is on what they're going to sign.
And did they mandate the sidewalks or did they volunteer the sidewalks?
It
They
was
they
certainly-
volunteered it.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't think you, I mean,
It was certainly just, sidewalks were certainly discussed in part of the
No, it's
presentation.
good,
Yeah.
it's good.
They'll benefit from
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right.
Want to do something else?
What other items on that list were ones that are,
well. Oh, I never get it. They're not LED signs, they're
signage?
signage,
Right.
signage.
Page.
We have, as I've looked at the
Maybe one.
signage language here, it does strike me as, more restrictive than, we might want or need. And I have looked at the signage, concerning internally illuminated signs, which are sometimes LED signs, sometimes referred to messaging, display messaging or messaging display. There are a variety of signs that are electronically powered. And driving around the county, there are ones that are, really obnoxious and I think which are distracting to drivers and inappropriate. And there are others that are informative and don't jump around or move or flash at you or anything else, in which can be very much regulated, and it would be my hope that we could find language which would permit some signs of that order with a lot of regulation. And, you know, I know there are other towns, in the county that have been able to do that. And so I'm interested in finding out, you know, from Will and from Warren to, if there is language that you see that which would enable us to be less restrictive on those kinds of signs.
Yes, the first part is making it less restrictive or spelling out exceptions is one thing. But do you want it across the board, or do you want it just for civic? Municipal?
I mean, to me, it would, if we could restrict them to civic, you know, municipal school,
And
buildings. That would be
schools are
appropriate,
open, so.
where, because we can't control the actual message. But I know that in, for instance, in LaGrange, they are restricted to civic buildings, public buildings, civic, you know, civic buildings and so on.
Couldn't that be like any church or?
Church,
Or
yes.
camp or anything
Church,
like that
yeah.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that, but
What's the language in LaGrange? Do you have a copy of that?
I sent it to you.
Yeah, I didn't bring it with me.
I don't know if I. Let me see if I have.
Can you get to LaGrange?
yeah, I can't.
Your general code?
I can just type in LaGrange
Oh.
code, right? Mhm.
Mhm. Somewhere.
So the fire department town or? is it
That's
separate
village.
In the village?
That's also not really
Or like
allowed.
town?
It's not allowed in the village either, but
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It's
not
there.
from the village, so.
yeah, our two issues are the American Legion
Mhm.
and also the school.
school,
Right. But I'm trying to have a conversation where we just discuss signs. We're not responding to a specific instance. We're trying to create language that would apply to, you know, to anything. And, you know, this is not, it's not my effort to try and,
Not either, but he asked, where do we have signs?
yeah,
Well, I have to
Yeah.
the fire, because sometimes.
Okay, the fire
is
code
Arm
now.
length of the town, it's not always the town, so
Mhm.
when we get this stuff, files.
This is whenever,
I don't think I
like, you
have-
know, if website is bad or good, and here we go.
Yeah.
So what do you want?
Would be under zoning.
Yeah, so just I'll do signs, then,
I just go down, scroll down.
okay.
No way. No signs, you know, but it's better, yeah, just.
Okay, I am looking at the town of LaGrange zoning code with
Mhm.
reference to EMD. This is from
Yeah,
Chris's
that's-
memo.
I got it. Hold on.
Oh, you did?
You want-
Some of the language,
Well, I've consolidated a lot of that zoning into one. Cause it's all over the
Right here.
place there.
in non-residential districts, EMDs are permitted only for non-commercial uses, example, schools, churches, civic buildings. EMD is only permitted to be incorporated as part of a monument sign and subject to all other standards regulating a monument sign. One sign utilizing EMD, I just think that should be one, is permitted per site, but one sign. A minimum distance of 400 feet shall be required between an EMD and another EMD. Signs utilizing EMD are not permitted as wall, window, or projecting signs. All copy, characters, or other changeable images shall be one color only with light copy on a dark background, except those bearing a state or federal registered trademark. Signs utilizing EMD shall be fitted with automatic dimming technology as certified by the manufacturer. To adjust the brightness of the sign relative to ambient light. So that at no time shall a sign exceed a brightness level of 0.3 candle foot. Above ambient light as measured at the nearest property line. I'm almost done. EMD shall contain static message only. Changing only through dissolving or fade transitions. Or with the use of other subtle transitions and frame effects that do not have the appearance of moving text or images, but which may otherwise not have movement of any illumination or flashing, scintillating,
Mhm.
or carrying of light intensity.
Yeah,
The following EMD display features are prohibited: scrolling, traveling, flashing, spinning, rotating, or any other moving effects of pattern or of illusionary movement or simulated movement.
so the point of that is that it's very restrictive in terms of what you could put on a
Right,
sign.
but it does
But-
create an exception,
Yeah,
you know,
no, it does.
that's not content based necessarily.
Right, no, it's, movement based and
Yeah.
distraction based and so on. So that is something that, I think would be appropriate in our code. And, I don't know, Warren, if that's something that you can help us with. I hope you can.
Yeah, I can take a look at it and see, and,
You can adopt what they said, most,
Hmm?
you can adopt what they.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to adopt it, that language,
Yeah.
I'd have to look at it a little more carefully, it's rather.
Cause the draft does have, not exception, but it does talk about those types of signage and it goes on to say electronic, mechanical, or electrical mechanical display and or animated elements involving rotating messages, movement, flashing, blinking, or intermittent changes of light. Constant intensity and color at all times when used, to depict action or create a special effect. As well as signs that emit noise, sound, smoke, or other similar means intended to attract attention.
Yeah.
A little more
Yeah.
concise.
So,
I mean, obviously, I think we all understand that the ability of a sign to be distracting to a driver is creating an unsafe condition. And, that's not something, and I think we've all seen signs. I'm not gonna mention which towns, but there are towns around us which have signs that very much.
well, Pine Plains, High School is
Pretty awful.
an example of an
Yeah,
awful sign.
yeah. Anyway, so I just,
Is,
I think this is something that I'd like to pursue.
is this a category that applies, townwide? So not about
Mhm.
commercial only or
Yeah,
residential?
signs is,
Cause I am
Not just
concerned
the-
about it in our rural areas too, if like a
Mhm.
church, big, most camps are, faith-based or those things,
Yeah.
I would be concerned about that. Versus a commercial, so just
Yeah.
as
The language
As a
in
point
my
out.
place was non-residential districts only.
in their thing,
Yeah,
okay.
which could be.
But ours just says prohibited and exempt in ours currently, okay,
Mhm,
There is one carve out, and that's for the gas station.
right,
mhm.
because that's by law, right?
price signs.
Wasn't there?
Yeah, we can-
carve-out
we-
for-
That's not required, you don't have to have.
Oh, you don't?
No. They only, the state, regulates the size.
The state regulates the size of gas station signs
The numbers,
The
the
number.
price numbering has to be a certain size.
and not, I mean, there's this maximum size.
Yeah, it's a maximum.
Mhm.
I think it's maximum, actually it's a minimum, I think. But they're only like what you
Yeah.
see above the gas pump.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can work with that, I mean, I'll take a look at it and then send it to Will and we can. Try to come up with something that might fit.
Well, again, the main thing is we can make the language as far as the exception, it's who you're giving the exception to is what's.
right,
I just
well,
wanna
that's,
make sure
yeah,
we're not,
that's,
don't run afoul of
Yeah.
the Supreme Court decision, which is very easy to run afoul.
Well, yeah, that's not it's not content based, you're.
You know, well.
It's
to
construction.
nature,
And then there's
what
the
they-
other
What they
big
determine
question.
to be,
Who enforces it?
mhm.
That's been our main problem forever. you know,
And that's our question in with regards to everything that we're doing.
I know.
What's that?
Who
Enforcement.
enforces
Enforcement.
anything? We don't have the
Well, if you
enforcement,
don't enforce it, it doesn't make any difference.
right, and that's kind of what.
Yeah.
But we
happens.
we
If
do,
law enforcement none of the code. makes
Yeah,
a
maybe I
difference.
can throw the code out.
Right,
we do have on page 102, the whole sign registration process that also it's,
For non-conforming sign.
no, just in general, that all signs were supposed to have a permit. And we're supposed to have an inventory of what's current
Yeah,
and then in the future, what is put up. So that it is, we are, I believe, supposed to go to the planning board for a sign, I believe. But sign registration, so there is a process that is supposed to be put into place with our new zoning too.
who's gonna create the inventory?
It's supposed to be our zoning enforcement officer.
That's a
but
lot.
who is that?
Yeah,
You need to get
there,
one.
you know,
It'll never happen.
there are a lot of things relative to the town that we would like to have, we're supposed to have, and that, we're not there yet.
No,
So, but then, does that mean we just take out 102 and 103? I mean, or are we saying that we would respect that for the future?
I would have to look, I'm not looking at it right now, but I'd like to.
I think we've always assumed that it was our building inspector who
Mhm.
was our enforcement officer, but I
Yeah.
think we just maybe.
Well, and
assumed
there,
that.
I mean, I know that our code enforcement officer was in here today and he had 8 inspections he was heading out to do, so to say that they're not doing anything is not.
no, I wasn't saying it.
No,
No.
I just didn't
But
like,
it's just,
we get
it's
that
not
in,
under,
but there are
it's not on
things-
their
Yeah.
actual really roles and responsibilities.
Right, so,
Yeah,
Well, it is, it's just no
Yeah.
one's made it a priority.
right, no, and that'll be something that the town board we can have a conversation about that, and. I mean, there are a lot of things that the town board can do, town board could hire more people.
It's a budget issue.
Yeah, it's well within the town board's ability to deal with those.
when the county takes over our emergency services, then we have a lot more money to do those things.
Mhm.
well, they're not gonna do that for free.
No, no. Okay,
It was I was looking over the comments of county planning, which I really thought were pretty good at this stage.
mhm.
It looks like some of the things you've already adopted, right?
Yeah, we made a lot of.
Yeah, you made a lot of changes. What about the sign towers? What is, I'm not sure I understand the sign towers. They said, consider specifically addressing sign towers. Facade easements that extend above the roof line are supposed to look like part of the building, but really serve as signage purpose, a signage purpose. These are increasingly popular. Dunkin' Donuts is one that always. So what is that?
I'm not sure if I recall that, is that when they build the facade that goes up high and it's basically just a hold the sign and nothing else? I mean, Home Depot is notorious for that, they have this thing that goes like this and then that goes up 6 feet. And
Right.
it has no other purpose than to put the sign Home Depot on it.
Yeah,
And Dunkin' Donuts, I know that has this vertical wall where they kind of go up
is that what they?
and, they put the Dunkin' Donuts sign on it. So it's kind of an artificial. Behind the wall, there's no purpose.
Right. I mean, should we
Yeah.
consider addressing that?
I think-
We
Oh, yeah.
already, we haven't addressed it specifically, but
But
with our sign.
it
regulations,
covers
you
it.
probably couldn't do that.
Okay, good, all right.
Yeah, because that certainly is something that I would not be happy about seeing.
No, you wouldn't.
Are there other parts, Edie, that what we've done that you think would be appropriate for with Will here to us to discuss?
I think you've hit on the two that have come up. I wonder, I keep telling you all to look at this one-page bulk standards.
We need to
And-
focus on that.
And I,
You just said-
well, all I can tell you is it's 3NR,
Table
Attachment.
agreement.
which I think there are areas that will. One, it's a little bit overly complicated, but I think it will be interesting when
Yeah.
you send this to Dutchess County Planning, they may have a lot of input. The footprint, at 10,000 feet is probably. They'll probably want it to be larger.
Who would want to go?
Dutchess County,
Mhm.
and they want housing.
Yeah, this, this is, and I know you've mentioned this chart before.
Many
And
times.
one of the things that is really difficult for a town board is we have numbers and it's very abstract in a certain sense, 1,000 square feet, okay, we understand 1,000 square feet, but without a frame of reference for that. Or, it's difficult for us to understand.
Did they mention that in their,
No, we weren't, I don't,
which is kind of funny.
Did they have this chart as part of what
Not-
they?
You're talking about which chart?
This
the
one.
bulk standards for the.
Free and R?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is.
So why would they want, sorry,
No, go ahead.
why would they want a larger? That's kind of funny,
They want housing.
they want more, no? But that's 10,000 for buildings. You
Yeah.
Could have housing
Yeah.
in 5 different buildings.
Well, as they kept saying, they don't want zoning. And it's their point of view, not necessarily ours at all. They kept using the term pencil out. In other words, if a developer wants to do one building and you're making them do 2 buildings, it's not gonna pencil out and the developer will go someplace else. I mean, that was basically the rhetoric that
Too
came back.
expensive.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the racket, I think at the planning board, the racket club that was proposed, I think was 13,000 or even more,
Mhm.
actually.
Yeah.
No, they-
But I just pointed out, and
Mhm.
I'm aware there are certain issues that will come up in public comment. This might be one of them,
Sure,
and another might be the size of allowable signs, just the
Mhm.
size.
Mhm.
Because we've had people in the audience in the past who feel that our signage as pointed out in our is too small. It doesn't mean, I think these are comments that will come up in public hearing.
well.
Not that you have to go along with.
No, I mean, but that will happen,
Yeah,
when you put it out.
Yeah.
To
We're
the
gonna
public,
get-
you're gonna get a lot of
We're
comments,
gonna get
Exactly.
comments about a lot
and
of things.
you'll
Yeah.
go back to the drawing board on certain aspects. of the-
Exactly,
of the zone.
exactly.
Wow, what you should do in prep of that before you get to the hearing with the comments and go to different places and see what signs you see,
Mhm.
get an idea of what they measure. And get your own feel for what is comfortable, what makes sense for, these. Is 24 square feet too big, too small, is, 36 too big,
Right.
But look at some of the signs around here in other towns and,
Well,
see if you can measure them if you can.
One of the questions I have is whether the size of a sign should in some degree reflect the size of the building that it's on. Because you could have a very big building, but it's always gonna be this exact same size. And I don't know whether that is, what we want, whether that same size sign on a large building is gonna look curious. Or whether it makes sense for that to be a factor. Something that I think is worthy of some thought.
Will, have you ever seen that? A proportion?
Yeah,
metric?
there's some codes that give you 1 square foot per linear foot of frontage and that. Sometimes, but they usually always have some cap somewhere.
Mhm.
And then
Okay.
they carve
Oh, you want
out
that.
things for grocery stores and depending on where you are, the bigger boxes, because they're not gonna get the big box otherwise, but you're not gonna get that anyway, but.
No,
No. we're not
also-
getting
lucky to
big
get a
bucks.
grocery store.
I also think it's in proportion to your environment, so if you're on a highway or if you're in a road, highway that has 2 lanes on each side versus our little rural roads. you know, you're much, for the most part, much closer to that sign, and even if you're going 55, I mean. If you're, and also with GPS these days, I think there's a lot less need to be like. I'm here because we all use, for the most part, GPS,
Yeah.
so.
In my opinion, signage is mostly a myth of need. More so for the reasons you just said. There is a need, I mean, I'm not gonna say there isn't. But for the most part, most people don't drive down the road, see a sign, say, I'm gonna go stop in, you know, that doesn't happen that much anymore. Also with proportional, be careful too, because. If you look at some of the shopping centers in the more built up towns, you look like a shop and shop right or stop and shop, they got a huge sign. I think you know it's a stop and shop, you don't need it, you. It
I agree. I mean, and a lot of towns and villages throughout the country have moved to smaller signage. And in a way, for me, it also, and lower, it brings your eye to it for me as a driver, and I see it. And it's surprising to me when a lot of villages have the signs, only allowed to be off the ground certain
Yeah, the
height.
monument signs in the last 15, 20 years have been more prevalent, and they do exactly what you said, they're more to your eye, they're more in keeping, they're more consistent if they all do it. And, you
They
know,
look nicer.
yeah, they do look nice, they look more architectural. The other thing too is that you're not getting them like, you know, like
Mhm.
this, right? Cause all that lends to distraction, you know, for you, not just, that could be dangerous, but it also just distraction of the community too. Trying to find where you are, so more sign isn't better.
I mean, I feel comfortable with what we have in a public comment, because,
I mean, you're never gonna please everyone, and then you're successful if you adopt something that doesn't please everyone.
Yeah, no, I know we're not gonna please everyone,
Right.
and, Edie, could you just remind the board of the schedule? Basically, once the board completes its review of between sending it back to the county and putting it out for a public hearing,
Well,
which comes first?
you set a date for a public hearing. You did this first, Will. Well, okay, we'll start at the bottom. You're at the top. You've received it, you've sent it to Warren. It needs to go to planning, zoning, the CAC. For comment, which I don't know whether you've done that.
I would like to do that.
Okay,
And I think
okay.
it's probably appropriate at this point to do that.
Okay.
So that can happen
Okay.
on Monday.
And the town board prepares an EAF and a proposed local law. Okay, EAF is environmental assessment form. Then the town sets a public hearing date and publishes a legal notice. And then there are required referrals, and Dutchess County Planning is through their ramp system, I think. And as they had asked, and we gave them a draft, but it's a draft that's several
No, they're gonna
iterations.
want it.
Yeah, no, they're gonna want what
Yeah, they want the town board's version.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly, but they are familiar with it, so it won't
Oh,
take
yeah,
them.
these are pretty exhaustive.
Yeah, so they've taken a good start.
So, and
Yeah, they really have.
they were very, very helpful in helping with the sign language.
Mm.
Because they had an attorney who's no longer there. I forgot her name, but she was great, and she went through our original proposal and was very, very helpful.
To make sure we didn't violate. the-
Exactly, exactly. So from the Supreme Court
Yes,
point of view, I think we're good. I hope so. And they'll get back within 30 days, or they'll ask for an extension, but it would be a minor extension. And they're waiting for this. Then if the amendments affect property within 500 feet of the following, referrals to those affected are required pursuant to New York State town law. And they must be sent 10 days prior to the public hearing. Question, the village obviously is, should they get it now or should we,
When you pass, you're talking about passing the local law? All the adjoining
No,
municipalities will get copies of
Yeah.
the,
okay,
The 10 days is a minimum.
yeah, that 10 days is
Okay.
not enough, but.
well, okay, but we should wait till we have the comments back from, the county.
That's it.
You said.
Well,
when
we
you're
said-
passing- When you're passing a local law
Yes,
and you're scheduling a public hearing,
yes,
that's the time that you send it to adjoining municipalities.
okay, so that's an important thing. And, but we're gonna circulate it, Monday to our various
Right.
in-house boards. Okay, got it, got it. Cause
If
they're
you
two,
wanna extend that to the village, you can do that.
You can send it to whoever you
Yeah.
want.
or-
Now, the reason I'm asking is because when we get comments back from the county, if we've already had the public hearing.
oh, no,
And
no,
we
no,
make some changes in result of the county's input,
we have the,
You have to.
do we
you
use?
set,
You have a
you
certain
set
period of
the
time.
date.
Yeah,
You
Got
wait for the comments back.
yeah,
Oh, there's a window.
Yeah.
It's either 30 or 35 days.
30.
Yeah.
That you have to give them at least
right,
Yes,
before you decide.
right. No, I just, you know, once it's,
You don't have
once
to
we've
take
had
your
the
time.
public hearing.
Right.
It
No,
doesn't seem
but you haven't
appropriate to
had it
then
yet.
change the
you
law.
have
No,
not had it.
no,
All
if you-
you've done is set a
Well,
date.
let me
Okay.
explain that. If you change,
Yeah.
if you've already gone to county, you have the public hearing. And then you make changes to the law, some of the changes might require a new 239M referral.
Yeah.
Some of them may not, if they're minor changes. Usually, you know, it has to be a fairly significant change.
There has to be a
require-
substance change.
Yeah,
Mhm.
substantive
Let's go
change.
back.
Yeah.
And not everything the county might say will also be. Forcing a different vote either.
Yeah, if the county recommends against adoption,
Mhm.
then you have to have a supermajority.
Oh, yeah, but that has not been the experience with Dutchess County. Apparently, other counties are much more forceful.
They
They're planning.
rarely do it. I was just disappointed
Yeah.
in comments in another jurisdiction
Yeah.
from county planning,
Yeah,
which they really did not like the local law. They criticized it. And when they said it's a matter of local concern, and it was passed by a 3-2 vote,
Mhm.
it would have gone down, which I was hoping it would.
Yeah. but, then, we hold the public hearing.
Mhm.
And it's open as long as you want it to be,
Yeah,
then you
We,
close
we can
it.
hold one or more public.
Yes,
hearings.
oh, absolutely. Then you close it and then, you complete the seeker. Is that what I'm
Well,
working on?
no,
Is that-
well, you're gonna do the secret, you're gonna do the fully, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. First of all, just so you know, the EAF is an environmental assessment form.
Oh, I do know.
We're gonna use a long form, well, not everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And we're gonna use a long form, and Will is gonna do that.
Well, Will has asked me to, and I haven't done it, but I will, to basically match the sections of this, proposed code with the comp plan.
Mhm.
Since I-
That's to me is the main.
That's,
And,
Mhm.
in fact, actually, no, Nan had done it before we had the comp plan. Okay,
So in the long form, most of the questions are irrelevant.
one of the questions is whether
Yeah,
it's,
so the beginning questions has the comp plan. So what's gonna be the EAF, it will be the long form, but it's gonna be most of the questions are irrelevant and it's going to be a narrative and the narrative is gonna
right,
extrapolate primarily on the.
It'll be the-
comprehensive
yeah,
plan.
you supplement the EAF with the narrative.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you're supposed to do your environmental review at the earliest possible stage before you have the public hearing, but most boards like to do it, and you're not violating seeker. Where you get the public input, you ask the public not only to comment on the local law proposal, but the environmental impacts, so that you get that input from the public. And that helps us to do the, hopefully will be what we call a negative seeker declaration, so we don't have to do a draft environmental impact statement.
What is that?
We would then do the secret determination of what we call no significance at the same time that we pass the local law,
And that's.
even though you're supposed to do it at an earlier stage.
Well, you are.
It's a better way.
5 minutes before you do.
Yeah, but it's much better to do it that way.
Yeah.
Because then you get public input. Theoretically, they want, under the secret regulations, they would want us to have already done. the
Yeah,
secret.
that never makes
But
sense.
nobody enforces that.
And that's more prevalent on the subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing about going to the county though, when you go to the county, I think the EAF needs to go with it as part of their complete.
At least the
application.
part one.
Yeah,
You know,
Oh, I better get busy.
because if you don't do that, then it's void.
Meg, you
Chris, did you want to touch on lighting? Because I'm good with a short statement for me, but I know there's big categories and that was one, and landscaping, right? Big. If we have time, I don't know if you're up for
Well, we do have a member of the public here, and an important member of the public, and I want to allow some time for that, because we did not in previous meetings have permit that, but I want to be able to if we can,
what time is our meeting supposed to end?
5:30,
Okay, I was just, may I just make a
Yeah,
statement?
yeah.
Okay,
please.
I've read this thoroughly and I'm really for all of it. In attending several of the recent planning board meetings, I was very encouraged by the dialogue between the planning board and applicants regarding where the code is hopefully going and their acceptance and investigation into cost and availability of different lighting sources, finding out that it actually saves them money and that they actually, because planning board cannot say you must do it because it's not in our code, but it seemed very positive, at least all the meetings I sat in, that people were really happy to have guidance in this way, and they cared about dark skies and they cared. So I do support this a lot, and I do think, although it might seem overwhelming or very detailed, lighting has the cost of motions and all these other lights have come down so much that it's beneficial to folks. And also Association of Towns, they share that info. So that's my point of view. I'm very happy with that segment, so.
Any other members of the board have any closing comments?
But we're not, just.
Yeah.
Did you indicate that referral has to go to the planning, a formal referral to the planning? board?
No, this is discretionary, but,
No,
I don't
it's not
think it's, I don't
discretion.
think it's in the
It's not
code.
code?
I don't think.
Are you kidding me?
What?
Most zoning codes require that when you do an amendment to the zoning code, that has to go to, your planning board. Similar to the 239 M referral.
Whether it's required or not. there's
And it
nothing
may
that
not be
prevents us from
required,
doing
we're
it.
gonna do it, but, most codes say you have to do it. So it's a violation if you don't, but we're gonna do that.
by the way, I have sent the landscaping, section to the CAC and I've had no comments back.
Well, they had seen it earlier. I thought,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
You should keep, I'm sure you have a list of everybody we refer
Oh.
to.
Mhm.
So we.
No, I think it's very
When we do our
important.
I'm gonna hand that
final
over to the real Tilly.
But there's also townscape and there are other,
Okay.
we can circulate it widely.
And it's
Uh,
online, right?
yeah.
Oh, it is, it's
Yeah, so
definitely
that they can just
online.
get the link.
Yeah,
and, go from there.
I can find it on the website.
They can, I saw it. Edie has it there.
What I'm gonna ask Will to do is, to give me a PDF of our most current. So that I can. Circulate that. Iterations will
Mhm.
drive you crazy, Ralph.
Mhm.
There are many.
Yes,
Mhm,
yes,
mhm.
yes. So,
Are there any other members of the board have any comments, closing comments before we?
I was just gonna ask you, do you have a record of what changes you made, based on county planning's comments?
Not really.
Because when it was hard for me to in going through their comments and going through the large. I mean, I could see where in some cases you changed it, but I wasn't sure about others.
I'm trying to remember,
Well, there was there would be a time frame when we
there's a
received
timeframe
that.
certainly reflected in the minutes.
Yeah.
They had very detailed minutes. Line by line, I'm not sure, there might be some document that.
I
comes
can
close
send
to
you a couple of sets of minutes that relate to what the.
Changes, yeah.
I can
Some of
send,
the stuff I really thought the comments were really good. I just want to make sure that you've taken them.
they came and gave us a special presentation.
I think we incorporated
Yeah,
high percentage of what they, not everything, but a high percentage of what they were asking in one form or the other.
Mhm.
Could we take? Oh, no, do you want?
Not right now.
Okay.
We'll have, we have future board meetings coming up.
Okay.
We can talk about other things then.
And one question on the prohibited uses, we have no quarries, right? Is that what you?
we do not have
We
any
have
boards.
no, okay.
For our next meeting, I'd like to bring up that subject though. It's on paper 37, but we don't have time today, so.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about the storage facilities,
Okay.
but we should talk about that,
Mhm.
zoning them out.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we have a minute. 3 minutes. Or more, if we stay late, but I would like to invite public comment. Bill, thank you for being here, and for your interest in the subject.
Very interested in this subject, as you, and thank you for providing the opportunity for public comment. Let me stand up. So
Yeah.
I can see you all. Thought that the way you're approaching things is very good. It seems like it's not going to take you a full year if you keep moving along at this rate, so that's great. 3 things that you discussed today, I have wrote down some notes on and I want to comment on. The first one had to do with outdoor entertainment associated with restaurants. And I would strongly recommend that if you do put that in there as permitted, that you include special permit. Because well, I'll just continue. Without that, it's very hard to take into account the specifics of a given situation. You might have a restaurant which is directly adjacent or across the street from housing, versus a restaurant which is nowhere near anything. And a couple of amplifiers at one location could mean nothing, in another location it could be, kid can't sleep all night and goes to school, without, any rest. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, I'm really glad about the sidewalks, that you're moving in the direction of both and. Because I think if you were to take out the requirement that large projects develop sidewalks, and for whatever reason, the town could not get a sideway district through or capital improvement project through, we would not be achieving our comprehensive plan goal, and also our complete streets goal of having these sidewalks. So let's do everything we can to have sidewalks. And I'm glad the conversation came up about what happened with the supermarket application, because that was a case where fortunately we were able to get the applicant to voluntarily do that. But without that in the code, we didn't have anything that we could actually, tell them they had to do it. It was, Warren said it was required, and it wasn't required because we couldn't require it. The third thing, I think all of you know how I feel about this, and it's just my personal feeling, I guess, but I'm going to use my allotted time for it. The question of lighted signs, and particularly LED signs. First of all, lighted signs, internally lit signs are not the same thing as LED signs, right? An internally lit sign is where you have, a plastic sign and it's got LEDs behind it or fluorescent lights behind it typically, and it's shining through. And it's, it's very commercial looking. And we have, and I'll bring this up in a second, but aesthetically, it's not very nice. Now, you may say, okay, what's aesthetics? It's up to Bill, you know, Bill has his own aesthetics, you have your aesthetics, I have my aesthetics. One place where we have a commonality of aesthetics is in the Greenway Compact. As, you know, a member of the Dutchess County Greenway Compact community, we should be looking at what those recommendations say. And they say a couple of things. First of all, they prefer externally lit signs where you have a painted sign and you have a light shining off it to a internally lit sign. One of the other things that they say, which I think is really important to keep in mind, is signs are not for advertising. Signs are for identification. And a lot of times when you have these very large signs, we talk about the size of a sign, Will was talking about the size of a sign at Home Depot or whatever. Yeah, it's not because you need to identify that it's Home Depot, it's really, it's a vanity thing, right? If you see a big Home Depot sign, their stock price goes up. You know, if I put up a store and I put up a big sign, it's saying, look at me on Big Shot, I have a big sign. So, you know, have the minimum that's necessary in order to allow the public to read it and understand it. And certainly as, you know, GPS technology becomes more and more prevalent, it's less important for identification because you know when you're getting there. But on the other hand, it's still important for people who are walking down the street and don't want to pull out their phone. But when it comes to the LED signs, now we're talking a whole other thing. With the size of a sign that can be on the building, with the orientation of the sign, potentially with the color scheme of the sign, whatever. When the applicant comes before a planning board and says, hey, I want to put up this sign, the planning board can say, okay, what's it going to look like? And they show it. And the planning board discusses it with the applicant or just says it's great. And then it's on a plan forever. And if you have enforcement, then you've got somebody who can go and say, hey, that sign you said you were going to put there, that's completely different. And you can enforce that. With an LED sign, all you can do is enforce the shape of it. I defy you to find an LED sign that you can buy that has black and white LEDs only, where the black LEDs are turned off LEDs, right? They all do faux color. That's just the way they are. And you can't, nobody here, nobody in this whole town can tell somebody what they can put on their LED sign. So you're saying, okay, well, they're gonna put stuff about their business, right? It's in the business district, they're gonna put stuff about their business. Well, yes, they may. But if they feel very strongly about a particular issue, let's say it's a political issue, think about what's going on in this country right now. Why wouldn't they potentially have their, you know, Joe's Deli during the day and F so-and-so during the evening? And can we say, no, you can't do that? No, all we can do is listen to the people who show up at the meeting and say, why are my kids being exposed to this stuff? And say, sorry, talk to the Supreme Court. And that's the problem with signs that can be changed. So I want you to just please think about that before you just jump in and say message boards are okay, because the message is not always okay. And that's my comments.
Thank you, Bill. Anything else from the board? Otherwise,
No.
I think we're done. Will, I just want to thank you for coming in. Thank you again. And, you know, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to you with more. And we will continue to work through this process. I think I know we would all like to do our best at looking at the proposed zoning amendments, amending them where we feel they need amendment, but otherwise respecting the work and the expertise and the intelligence that has gone into them. So that we can get this done, because the one thing I don't want to do is just sit on this for forever. But we have more meetings coming up, and I really appreciate the fact that all of the board have made an effort to come to all these meetings, and hopefully we continue. On my part, I will try and make sure that they, don't go on forever. And that's the promise I made to Ralph, and it's the problem I make to everybody. We will get done. Anyway, thank you all very much. And I'd like- we.
Do we have one with Nan?
I think,
14,
April fourteenth, fifteenth,
it's 15.
April
April
15th.
15th?
Yeah.
Question mark, we didn't have the time.
let me
No, it-
distribute that because I haven't cleared it with Warren yet, so
Oh,
let me get,
No, has been no time set.
there's no, yeah, we
To my
have not
knowledge.
publicly announced the time yet. We have something that I hope will work. I'll get that out to you as quickly as possible.
But is there anything we need to meet again outside of Nan's thing? Once a month?
But at some point, we actually have a completed
No, I'm
document.
not saying
Yeah.
that. I'm asking, do we need to meet more than once a month? That was my question.
If the board wanted to meet every week, I would do it, but
No, I
I
don't.
don't think anybody's gonna wanna do that.
Let's see how the next meeting goes.
Yeah. Let's take it from
See
there.
where we are.
All right, could I like to ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Should say.
Good.
You too.
Thanks,
Nice
Los.
to meet you.
See you all.
Thank you.
You
You
go,
get to drive back in daylight.
Yeah,
where do you go? Where do you go?
live in San Diego.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hope I
It
did
takes
that
7.
right.
I wouldn't.
It took 7.
Way I live is
Wow.
7 and 4.
It goes pretty fast, actually.
This
Yeah, it's,
It's Danbury.
appear to
an hour
have